Good afternoon, Arc Republic family. We are talking to Ms. Tezlyn Figaro, a political commentator, activist, and as well a woman who has launched a lawsuit against Our Revolution, a nonprofit group that is about pushing progressive candidates. However, Ms. Figaro has been in the crosshairs of a lot of racial and political conflict that has caused her, as she says, to lose her job. So today we're talking to Ms. Figaro to see what her side of the story is. How are you doing today, Ms. Figaro?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me on. Tezlyn, please.
Okay, well, you know what? Look, say my family from the South. We always say Ms., Mr., or Ms. before they tell you. So
Oh,
I
no
don't,
worries. Thank you so
and I am,
much.
and I, oh, you're welcome. I am Kaya. So let's get down to it. So let's talk about, let's kind of give my readers an overview of your relationship and who you are in our revolution and the Bernie Sanders campaign.
hmm Well, I joined the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016. I was a part of the African American National Outreach Department. It's really important. I say national because a lot of people have experiences that they share that are on the local and the state level, or they may say, oh, I knew someone black who worked in. Um, Atlanta, for example, or I knew a volunteer, or I knew someone that worked black on the campaign that doesn't share my experience or my team members' experience. So the reason why I want to make that clear is there is an African American outreach department that was on the national level. It was less than maybe a dozen of us that worked on all of the African American outreach when we looked at from a national perspective. So there was only one national outreach team. The director, that is Director Marcus Farrell, and he was charged with that particular team. Our team was dispersed across the country. Many of us worked in various different states. Some states longer than others, but we were pretty much the black, quote unquote. I was the black person on the ground from the national team that was there when we set up Flint offices, when we set up the campaign. And so we had a group of us that were charged with making sure that there was a national outreach effort for Black constituents. I was the racial justice director. I did racial justice because it was of interest to me, not political director, not communications, any of the things that I do have over 20 years experience, despite politicals articles saying that I had zero experience, but I have over 20 years experience in politics working on various different roles, particularly communications. But this was important to me because it was a national campaign. I felt that racial justice was important. It was becoming increasingly important in our generations with the Black Lives Matter movement, and also with my work with attorney Benjamin Crump. For those who don't know, that's Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown's attorney. I've worked with him personally on two cases that we've worked side by side with: the Officer Halscliffe, Oklahoma City Halscliffe case, which is the case where he raped the 13 Black women, and another case that we worked on with Monroe Bird. I brought him those cases. We partnered together. I was charged with a lot of the communications, with making those stories go national, and actually representing the family of the Monroe Bird family as they went through the entire process. So my background has always been in justice, has always been about criminal justice reform is my main issue, mass incarceration. And so Bernie Sanders had that platform on his website. He said that these were the things that he understood affected, obviously, African Americans most than anyone else. So that is what drove my attention to that role. No one assigned me to that. When I joined the campaign, Marcus asked each of us, what area do you want to work in? What area of expertise do you have? And that was one that I wanted to be in. After the campaign, I went on to Our Revolution, which is the organization that was inspired by Bernie Sanders, pretty much to keep his campaign going. A lot of people will say, oh, Bernie Sanders has nothing to do with it. That's just simply not the truth. It was inspired by him. Jeff Weaver, his senior advisor, was the first president with Our Revolution. The board was stacked with individuals who worked on the campaign, either as surrogates or as a support role. The office was full of former campaign workers, that worked on the campaign. So it was meant to organize those groups, which are now over 600, to keep his momentum going, which is why he's one of the strongest candidates out there, because over the last 3 years, our revolution has worked to keep that momentum going. And there I was the director of strategic outreach.
To the site, it pops up to donate to his campaign. So he very much is
Right.
intertwined,
Right.
to it, right? So I want to kind of, before we go into our revolution, I kind of want to touch on a couple of things that emerged during the Bernie Sanders campaign and after, and actually is a thorn in his side as well. And that is his lack to address racial issues in the United States, right? Which, from what I understand, is one of your biggest critiques of Bernie Sanders.
Absolutely. I mean, it's well documented. Even the pinned tweet that I have on my Twitter, if people want to go, I've listed over 42 different items that all show the criticism, not just from me, but from former staff, from the public, from media, whether it's been alt-right media, whether it's been alt-left media, whether it's been progressive, you name it. Everybody across the board has made one comment or another with Bernie Sanders' lack of, and I don't want to get into this game of lack of understanding. At this point, he understands quite well. I am aware of many private conversations that the senator has had, as well as he's had it's been public discourse. So for us to say that he's confused, or maybe he just doesn't know, maybe he just needs a good talking to me is a flat out lie. I mean, I don't know any other way to be clear about it. Senator Sanders knows exactly what he's doing. And I'm not saying, again, that he's racist or he doesn't care about those issues. What I'm saying is this is a man that has advocated the exact same way for the last 30 years plus. And that way has been that he believes that once the economic issue is solved, everything else will kind of go away. He still does not have an understanding that even while I was in Oklahoma City, living next door to Officer Hostility, who raped those 13 Black women, and when I say next door, I mean next door. Every time I pulled out of my driveway, and this is before Bernie Sanders, every time I pulled out of my driveway, I was pulled over quite a bit. I could have easily been a Sandra Bland because I was in a Mercedes with Florida tags in Orlando. I was told by officers that, oh, well, normally people that have Florida tags are trafficking dope. I was told, even driving the speed limit, oh, okay, well, you're driving 2 miles under. That's usually a sign that you're trafficking dope. So, and when you look at Oklahoma, that has more women incarcerated than anywhere in the world. In Oklahoma, more women are incarcerated than anywhere in the world. That is why when also Officer Hostility pulled over those Black women and were able to threaten to take them to jail while they were succumbed to his advances. So Bernie Sanders still doesn't understand that although I had the income to be in the Mercedes, to appear to be doing okay, it still did not stop me from being a Black woman. And let me correct myself, because I just did what everybody else did. Bernie Sanders doesn't understand. He does understand. It's just not something that he's going to address because it affects him and his constituents when he talks about dealing with, he said, quote and unquote on his Twitter, that he is ashamed that the Democrat Party hasn't learned to talk to white working class like him. So there is when you look at the people who are motivated by the Trump side, and you look at people who are motivated by the populist movement on the left, it is a lot of quote unquote white working class that feel they've been forgotten about. And so if Bernie Sanders were to talk more about black, outside of him talking about he marched with King, outside of him talking about being chained to a Black woman, then now he will be cutting off a constituency that he believes that he needs. And politicians move on their constituencies. Unfortunately, they don't move based on principle. A lot of it has to do with moving towards their constituencies and where they're going to earn the vote. So what Bernie Sanders is doing is deliberate and it is intentional. And it's okay if that's how he wants to roll. The problem is, let's not pretend that we don't see what we see. And so if I'm hired for racial justice director, I meant justice before Bernie Sanders, and I'm gonna mean it after Bernie Sanders is dead and gone if I outlive him. And so what happens in the political operative space is a lot of people like myself don't speak up, because once you speak up, you are blackballed. I know that there is a very unlikely chance that a politician will ever want to hire me again. I know that I'm actually putting myself in a bad position by speaking up. Even the attorneys at our revolution said that I have more to lose than they do. So I am well aware of all of the casualties involved with speaking up. But I look at everyone before me that has spoken up and has died and been beat and been whipped, they've had to endure so much more. So I appreciate this interview because it's so important that we get to the grassroots and to the people that I'm directly talking to, not the mainstream media, not the way that people have wanted to paint me because I go to Fox News. Every time I'm on Fox News, I'm always interjecting our issues, Black issues. Unfortunately, you don't hear that a lot on MSNBC. You don't hear that a lot on CNN as often as we would like, because the talking points are very clear. Trump, immigration, Me Too, LGBT. If you're not talking about what they want to hear on a 24-hour rolling cycle, then unfortunately you're not booked. How do I know? I've booked many people for CNN and MSNBC. I'm also aware that Fox loves my banter against Democrats because it motivates their base. I get that. But at the end of the day, what I stand on is the same across the board. I will not sacrifice myself, my people, or what I stand on just because, oh, well, you don't want to say it to Fox because Fox is going to use it against them. Well, maybe if somebody's using it against them, maybe if someone's calling it to their attention, maybe we can start seeing some correctiveness in this abusive relationship. The days of what goes on in this house stays in this house are over with. And that is what we're now seeing with people like you and people like new media and people that are out there screaming and yelling, saying we see what we see. It's not that Democrat policies are not most advantageous to Black people. Of course they are, when you look at it from a broad standpoint. What I'm saying is we have got to be done with being told one thing and hiring me just to be a Black face and not expecting me to advocate for Black people.
Good point. I wanted to go back to when you made the decision to join Our Revolution, knowing the failures of the Bernie Sanders campaign and his failure to address race, knowing that Our Revolution directly fed into the possibility, the probability that Sanders was going to run again. What made you sign on and join regardless of that?
With Our Revolution?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I've always been a supporter of Nina Turner. You know, I've worked with her prior to, she was the reason why I came to the campaign or brought my attention to the campaign. I think she is a phenomenal leader. To be honest with you, I wish she would have ran herself. You know, I've said that. After seeing what I saw on the campaign, I really believe that with Nina Turner being in leadership, that now she would have an opportunity to change the tide, to change the conversation. What she was doing, that work that she was doing was important, you know, to be able to have outreach to 600 different groups, to be able to go speak. When they saw her, they saw access. And so to be able to support her in that role, to make sure that Black people knew, hey, there's space for you over in this movement. It was one of the things that we had a real hard time, you know, with getting people to even allow us in the church, to even talk to the pastor, to even get an opportunity to talk to the members, to be able to talk to local leaders who completely shut us out because we weren't working for Hillary Clinton. So her going over to Our Revolution was really important because there was a Black person in leadership. See, there's a difference between having a surrogate that gives a good speech versus having a Black person in leadership. And I knew, and I believed at the time, that she would do all that she could to ensure Black people had a voice. What she later found out was that the board has a bigger voice than her. The issues that were going on between Latino and Blacks all throughout the campaign on into Our Revolution had a bigger voice than her.
So
because it's not one.
So Tezlyn, tell me, could you outline these issues that were going on between the Latino staff members and even in Our Revolution and the African American ones? Like, what were some of the main issues? Because this is what I see as the impetus, or what was the reasons why you were fired, or as said that you were fired.
Right. Well, if you go and if folks look at that long list of receipts, you know, there was an article that I put out there early on where Ted Devine had said that, you know, there was more to invest in the Latino community. That was where they were getting more support from young voters, from the Latino community. Actually, Bernie Sanders talked about immigration and how immigration affected the American worker, just like Barack Obama did. It wasn't until the Latino community said, hey, we don't like the way you know, the position you're taking on immigration. And he switched his commentary. He switched how he dealt with it. He started talking more about DACA. He started talking more about the issues that were of their concern. In fact, there's a clip out there with Ted Devine where they asked him flat out, are you going to spend more time in the African American community or the Latino community? He said flat out the Latino. I mean, it was crystal clear based upon the fact that they had media relationships with black media. I was happy to see yesterday, whether people like Roland Martin or not, but I was happy to see him interviewing Bernie Sanders yesterday. Bernie Sanders refused to interview him. And so there's always been a consistent issue, and I won't say between, staff all the time, but more or less the strategy of the campaign. What was important, what wasn't important. The Black outreach team was always fighting for money to be spent on black media. It was in the article on one of the pinned tweets where they literally said that investing in black media, such as yourself, was a matter of economics, literally. So he's grown in some ways to do the Roland Martin. But the only reason why is because we were there pushing this issue for the last 3 years straight. And now he's learned you can no longer just say, hey, I'll march with King. It's not enough. So shout out to all of the media, the black media, new media especially, that has been pushing Bernie Sanders on these issues. Because if not, then it wouldn't have never talked about. I'm just the only one that is taken into a federal suit to make sure that it's documented. That is no more reading between the lines. There's no more he said, she said. It was important that it was actually put down legally. Win, lose, or draw. The importance to say that all of your suspicions were true. And he needs to do better if he's going to be president of the United States.
So I wanted to go back. Our revolution says that you were terminated because of your position on immigration, and
Correct.
that it was making some of the staffers highly uncomfortable, your position. You're saying that no, it was the fact that our revolution did not want to deal with the lack of addressing African American issues and allowing you the opportunity to really kind of talk about what your position is and why you go hard for black folk.
Right.
And as a result of that, because of this very politicized or strategic way that our revolution, basically our surrogates that Bernie Sanders is doing, is focusing on the Latino community. It actually is hurting everybody, right? But specifically, it's not bringing these issues that you talked about in terms of social justice, in terms of racial social justice. So I want you to talk more about what prompted you to finally say, because in a tweet, and I read the whole 37, it's a dissertation. It's not a tweet, it's a dissertation. Okay. At one point you said that you try to work things out privately, but what prompted you to go public and also to file the suit?
Yeah. For 3 years, I've watched my colleagues go and speak up. They've even, people can criticize Simone Sanders for going over to the Joe Biden side, and I do. That still is independent of when she actually came out and said she experienced racism on the campaign. She said that it wasn't staff, but those of us that know, we know how our black staff was treated, even black surrogates. There are many stories I can tell with how I witnessed black surrogates being treated, but I believe their story is for them to tell unless I'm forced to tell it. Right now, I don't feel I'm forced to tell it, but I witnessed myself how black surrogates were treated. So after we went through, first of all, the comments that they deem anti-immigrant, let me make this clear. You don't get on national TV and talk to 3 million people and expect everybody to agree with what you say. I have no problem with someone saying, I felt that was too harsh or that was anti-immigrant. My comment was crystal clear, saying that while everyone's focusing on immigration, meanwhile, more black men are in prison than those who were enslaved in 1850. I talked about how black people are being held accountable for breaking the law, over sentenced, thrown in jail, guilty before even charged before a jury. And I talked about if we have compassion for immigrants, if they break the law, if they come over, what happens when black people break the law? It was a conversation. Now the videos that are out there now saying, oh, now we must do something about private prisons because now immigrants are being thrown into private prisons. Well, I've been talking about private prisons, and many of us have been talking about private prisons for decades. Why is it now that immigration now has you caring about private prisons? Which is fine. I'm not anti anything. That's ridiculous to say that just because of the issues that I fight for are anti-immigrant. Look at now the Statue of Liberty, the new museum that came out and said people forgot that the Statue of Liberty was actually a celebration of slaves being freed, not anything to do with immigration. So does that mean that they too are anti-immigrant? So after having these conversations, knowing what I know, a year of filing an EEOC claim, not once being taken serious about these issues, not once being, just kind of like that, oh, eventually it'll just go away. Because again, most people don't speak up. Why would they want to speak up? Why risk your entire career? Why risk your entire credibility? I've been in human resources for 15 years outside of politics. No human resources company would ever bring me back into their organization. I have really put myself at more liabilities than I've had to gain. But at the end of the day, it's not about dying and resting in peace. It's about resting in peace on the pillow that I have right now. And so I felt that it was important to know that somebody really actually means what they say when it comes to Black outreach. I don't care if it means I won't have another job in politics. I don't care if it means you'll continue to ostracize me and call me anti-immigrant. I don't care if it means that I'm hurting everybody. The reality of it is, it needed to be spoken up against. I could no longer just be ignored and thinking that it went away. There were literally 6 chances for us to talk about this, to say, what are your concerns? My main concern was my name. To have a board member go out and say, to literally ask Politico to write a hit piece about me, to say that I'm anti-immigrant. Politico never called me for an interview, never. They never asked for my opinion, my comment. They wrote an article that said I was anti-immigrant, that I had 0 experience in politics, that I had 0 experience in staffing. I am an award-winning staffing firm owner. I've worked for the first and third largest staffing firm in the world. I've started my own staffing firm from 0 to 300 employees. I've won Orlando Business Journal twice. I have over 20 years in political experience on every level, from the city, the state, and the local. To say that I have 0 experience in politics was a flat lie. They created a narrative to ostracize me, to say, oh no, but she's anti-immigrant. Oh no, because she's on Fox. And because of those 2 things, nobody ever took the time to say, let me see what it is that she's thinking. Let me see what it is that she said. And because I really started, I'm more active on Facebook than I am Twitter. I got on Twitter when I got on the Bernie Sanders campaign. So most of the people on my Twitter were Bernie Sanders supporters. So there was no one there to defend Senator Turner and I. So it was just a complete tractor steamroll over me, my reputation, everything that I've stood for. To have a client come out and say that, and not say, no, the comments I made on Fox were before I was with Our Revolution, when I was not on the campaign. No, we disagree with what she said, but she's not in charge of anything that would hurt anything that have to do with immigration. She's done her job. She's done what she's supposed to do. She hasn't broken any rules. This was a co-op between Lucy Flores and Catalina Vasquez. That was never said. So am I supposed to just allow my name to be trashed, me as a single mom, all for the sake of Bernie Sanders? I tried to work this out before he announced, but I was never a threat. But now that I'm talking about it, now that I've connected the dots, now that I've rolled the receipts, now I believe they'll have a different position, because it is no journalist no one has ever said, you know what, let's take this from the top to the bottom. Let's start from our first accusation when the Vermont Black leaders told Bernie Sanders that they felt invisible, all the way to my lawsuit. Let's take this entire 3 years collectively and look at it as a body. And let's not be distracted. I love his surrogates. I adore Nina Turner. I adore Killer Mike. I've worked with Sean King. He's helped me work with my clients, with Benjamin Crump. They work together. This is not against their Black surrogates. I've been very careful to not speak ill of them. This is about what we know, what they know about that movement, and what this organization has done to my name. And Bernie Sanders is absolutely connected to it, because if Bernie Sanders can speak up for Walmart, McDonald's just on yesterday, Amazon, Delta, he can engage himself into those private organizations and tell them how to operate with their employees. But you mean to tell me your Black employee, or your former employee who's currently working at Our Revolution, now he's hands off? Oh, Bernie Sanders don't have nothing to do with it. No, I call foul. I call BS. If you can't step in to fix this situation, then he certainly doesn't need to be president of the United States. And that's how he's connected. He's created an environment where it's okay to do Black people that way, to do Black women that way, to do Black outreach that way, because they've consistently done it for 3 years straight.
I want to run something back. You said that the 2 women co-opted our revolution. Can you explain that? What does that mean?
What I mean, and I want to be careful when I say co-op, they didn't try to take it over, but it was a coup. They were trying to remove Senator Turner from power.
Oh,
This was about, and I did interviews about it when it first happened. It had nothing to do with me. And comments, they knew about those comments prior to. It had nothing to do with me. It was a constant struggle between Black outreach and me pushing Black outreach, and even Senator Turner, if you will. But again, that's her story to tell. It was a constant conflict between Latino and Black outreach. Once they knew that I would be promoted into the chief of staff position, that was now a problem, because now you got a Black woman who's president and a Black woman who's in charge. That was not their idea of what our revolution was supposed to be. That's about as clear as I can be on that. But there were constant things that they did to undermine her leadership. So that hit piece that said there's a disarray in our revolution, that was Catalina Lucy Flores, former board member, current board member, that went to the media and created that hit piece that talked several paragraphs about Senator Turner and her bad leadership. I was just a couple of paragraphs, but I was the easiest to attack because I'd been on Fox.
well,
So that it made it easy to attack me.
well, I think it's very interesting in the discussion when you talk about immigration, even though Latinos represent a disproportionately higher amount of immigration, there is a contingency of Black immigrants, which is something that you pointed out in a tweet, because I've read your dissertation, which was good. And you talked about how you, it was a song you made. It was like a political song. And you were like, Haitian, you know, Haitian Massive, I see you, right? And I think it's really interesting, like, you have Latino on Black, but in the Latino immigration, there is very rarely, and I can't think of any where it talks about even Afro Latinos, you know, or Black immigrants.
Yeah. And that's why I love receipts. Yeah, I had posted this was back in 2013, where I did a track for Florida Zoes. And for those who don't know, that's Haitians, you know, called Zoes in Orlando, Florida, which is heavily populated, you know, with the Haitian community, the Caribbean community. Even, you know, when I tell people I'm from Louisiana, and people don't like when I say this, I know there's a lot of folks out there who don't like us acknowledging, you know, other nationalities, but the reality of it is Figaro's Creole. The Louisiana slave trade is why my name is Native American, Italian, Spanish, French, and Black. Nobody is disowning or saying that. I'm not a part of movements that say, oh, they don't matter. That's ridiculous. What I'm saying is, we are not talking about Black Americans. Somebody can very well be an immigrant and be an American. Somebody could come over and be an American. What I'm talking about is, in the media, I have a responsibility for me in my 5 minutes. I can't talk about what everybody else do. You don't have to like the Fox host, or you don't have to like the CNN host. I'm only talking about Tezlyn Figaro, the 5 minutes that I have when I have the microphone. And in media, to me, to have a platform that way and not insert those of us that were born, died, and served in this country, to not be recognized at the table as a group that still needs attention, like Flint still not having clean water, and the cable news cycle is 24 hours around the clock around the same 2 or 3 topics. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about cable news cycle, 24 hours, same thing, over and over and over and over. When President Trump first got in, it was all about DACA, 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 DACA. Now it's the wall to wall to wall to wall to wall to wall. And they're not talking about Black Haitians. They're not talking about Black anything. They're talking about the southern border. This is an issue that they're making because of the southern border. And I salute the Latino community for riding for their people. I really do. I think I applaud it. I think I wish that Black people, our votes were not so depressed, because we've been singing and dancing and marching, you know, for 200 plus years. So we don't have the urgency that they do. One of the staffers who attacked me is undocumented. So her urgency to get these policies pushed, to get them, you know, spoke on right now, are going to be higher than people in my family, because she's looking at being deported, you know. So her urgency is greater than mine or others.
But you know, Tezlyn, let me just interject for a minute. I'm loving this conversation, by the way. I really appreciate you talking. There was a time, and I'm from Los Angeles, so I'm very well aware of having a very strong Latino population. But like specifically in California, when you had the rise of the Black Panther Party, you had also the Chicano movement, the Brown Party, and organizations worked in tandem. Why could there not be a coexistence, or perhaps one movement, but supports the other? Why cannot that be right now? Even in the urgency. So there's an urgency of deportation. There's also an urgency of not getting shot by the cops, on a Friday night.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that other groups, Black people are constantly working for everybody else's issue. We're always helping this group and helping that group and helping this group and helping this group and lift all boats and all tides. We're all boats, when the tide lifts, all boats ride. I mean, we've always helped. That's all we've ever done is help, 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 help. I'm not saying we don't have good allies. I'm not saying that there's people that don't support us. What I'm saying, if you watch any news station at any time, at random, which is why Melissa Harris Perry lost her job. She said, I want to talk about things that are more fruitful besides just this all the time. She quit her job because of that. So when you talk about the space that I'm in, to be able to get on national TV, which could be a once in a lifetime thing, they can bring me on and never bring me back. Those were the issues that I'm talking about. I'm not saying that we can't all work together and all get along and all that. And I'm not saying be divisive. Human nature tells us that doesn't work. At the end of the day, it's survival of the fittest. At the end of the day, it's self-preservation before all. But I'm not here to say who should do this or who should that. What I'm saying is equal amount of time and resources and urgency. If Bernie Sanders can change his entire philosophy on immigration because they told him to, then he should change his entire philosophy on Black outreach because we told him to. He has not. So it just shows their discrepancies. There's discrepancies. Every other group gets full-fledged. Just like when I say Black people, it's Black people who are LGBT. I know it's Black people who are LGBT. I'm not stupid. I know it's Black immigrants. That's not my point. My point is, which is your point, why can't we all work together? I'm asking the media the same thing. Why are we not talking about Black issues? It's more than just getting shot by the police that are issues dealing with, with Black folks. It's jobs. It's access to capital. It's Black chambers who have zero voice. It's Black businesses. You never hear that on the left side. Everything is social. It's more issues to us than just criminal justice. So those issues are not being embraced, and politicians are not having to correct themselves. That's what I like about the reparations conversation. Whether we get reparations or not, whether you agree if it should be assets or checks, what the reparations movement has done, which is very similar to what Black Lives Movements have done, it has put these candidates on blast to say, are you here or are you over there? That I love. It's making candidates say, like Bernie Sanders, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? You know what I mean. It's putting people on blast. And that is the populist movement that we're in right now.
So that's a really good point that you raised. And I want to finish up to just go back to your lawsuit, but I asked the question, talk about economic justice as a form of justice, which is something that you talked about. This is just me, throwing out there, perhaps because you went outside of racial justice and began to push economic justice, or to hold those accountable, and for Black folk to get some type of equity. Do you think that became a problem, particularly because Bernie Sanders is about income equality, but saying specifically you owe Black people something, a check, something?
Yeah, bottom line, at the end of the day, the campaign's always been about economic first. He touches on it, he talks about it, but you're not going to hear him talk about it to the extent that you would another candidate. I think Senator Warren has done a better job, to be quite honest with you, with addressing Pacific policies. That's why he stumbled at Cheetah People, because when you get down to Pacific policies on one, what you've done in the past and what you're going to do in the future, you can't just say, well, I'm going to change the income and everybody's going to make $15 an hour, right? But there's still going to be a gap between me and the white woman. There's still going to be a gap because she's also going to increase. So who's going to take care of the gap? If we're already like this and you raise us higher, all we're doing is doing this. But the gap, where's the gap? And that's what the reparations movement is about, whether people agree or not agree. It is about talking about the gap, the wealth gap, not just the income gap, but the wealth gap. And it's putting politicians on their toes. And I think that's what's good about 2020. And this is good. Bernie Sanders is not above critique. Even Job asked God, why me? He's no God. He's no God. These politicians are not rock stars. You know, we've come into a place where we feel we can't criticize nobody. If you want to say Trump is racist, fine, say it all day long, but address the racism going on the Democrat Party as well, which I see often as two sides of the same coin, which is why I'm independent. Oh, well, Tezlyn, you don't talk about Trump being racist enough. Okay, I'll say it. They're racist. What else? I've said it. You also got 20 talking heads every day calling them racist. Who's going to call the other folks racist? Where's the balance? Where are we going to have the balance and have an honest conversation about white supremacy and those who are being left behind? And also, not everything just based on race. Like I said, economics, there's other, but race plays into that as well. But Bernie Sanders' idea is not true. But it's not even about that, really, Kaya. It's bottom line, he doesn't want to be seen as somebody that's playing into identity politics. He says, you know, I don't want to weaponize it. No, he don't want to talk about it. Bottom line, he don't want to recognize it. Then it's not about weaponizing it. It's about you don't want to recognize, because he's playing to Trump supporters, period. Just say it. I'm okay with saying it. I'm on Fox News. It's all kind of Trump supporters, but they know where I stand. But I'm also not looking for votes. And that's where the conflict comes into. See, if I was looking for votes, I would have to switch up how I talk. So I just want people to recognize what he is. Doesn't mean he's a bad guy. That might be the guy for you. But we have to be out of this as Black people of thinking that everybody, you know, is addressing our issue, because they're not. They're simply not. And he's had more than enough talks, privately, publicly, to change his position. And he's not. That's not who he is, period.
So in the lawsuit, you talk about lost wages. You talk about things that you are attempting to recoup as a result of that. You said earlier that because of the lawsuit, you pretty much have earmarked yourself as being, and I worked with Cynthia McKinney, so baby, I know about outspoken women who've gotten ostracized to the point where, you know, they've become virtually unemployable. And that you're setting a mark, right? You're drawing a line in the sand. You're a mother. What has this done to you and your daughter? How is she?
Yeah, and you know, and I don't want to get in trouble with my attorney because he'll talk about details, but I will just tell you, this has not been easy. You know, as Black women, we're always we show up strong. You know, we tweet strong, we scream strong. You know, we appear to be together. And most oftentimes we are. That's all we know. But it doesn't mean that just because I'm outspoken or just because I'm standing on what's right doesn't mean that I haven't wrestled with anxiety or depression or being set apart and isolated, having what you've worked for your entire life be characterized or mischaracterized. And again, it's not because they agreed with it. It was because a client to me, a boss, an employer, came out against me without ever allowing me an opportunity to explain myself to them or the newspaper, to have a conversation with me. None of those things happened. It was just wake up and this is what happens. So how it was done was intentional, was deliberate, was cruel in every sense of the word, and deliberate, and having nothing to do with me as a person, but it was okay for me to be trashed as a result of. I don't mind, you know, people saying, oh, but that's because you're that's fine. But when you talk about an employer who never once sit down to talk, first of all, me being on Fox News came up in my vetting, number one. There was no secret about me being on Fox News. I did Fox News prior to joining Our Revolution. There was never any secret. My attorney's going to break that part down. So, you know, from a legal standpoint of saying what you didn't know and you did know and all of that, there's something called receipts. So my attorney will break that part down. But to answer your question on what is done to me, of course you wrestle with these things. But I wrestled with it when I was living next door to Officer Halsclough. That very certainly had my life on the line. That's why I always draw people's attention to that. I live next door to the police station. I could have easily been a Sandra Bland. I'm yelling and screaming up and down, arrest the police, and I'm living next door. So that should give you a glimpse of who I am as a person. This was in 2014, 2015, before I got on this campaign. There's nobody backing me. There's no Biden behind me. People come up with these conspiracies. Oh, a campaign is paying her. No, campaign's not paying me a dime. Fox News, I'm not a contributor at Fox News. I don't work for Fox News, but go look and see who the contributors are for CNN. Look at the black folks that's getting paid over there to say what they say. Wonder why they don't take certain positions. I know the answer, because if they do, Fox won't book them. I pick and choose the statements that I make. If I wanted to get rich, and this is what people don't understand when they say, oh, you're just probably doing this. No, first of all, I'm doing this to clear my name and to stand up for what's right and what I know about this movement. If I wanted to get rich, the right side will welcome me with open arms, without a question. Just as popular as Candace Owens is, I could be just as popular, if not more so. So there's plenty of opportunities to sell myself, sell my soul. I could certainly work with the establishment if I want to. I have a long career of working with politicians in the state of Florida on every single level. There have been many opportunities. I started my own business without a dime. I've been very successful in business. There are many things I could do to make money, many things I could do to be popular. Hell, I can rap. I'm a poet. I mean, there's many things I can do. When it comes down to this justice, though, when it comes down to what I really stand and believe on, there was no other option but to do it. But it was not one that you walk in blindly and that you walk in wanting to do. You know, if I could have it another way, I would have preferred it been another way. But this was the only way. So to me, this is what God has ordained for this time and space. Otherwise, it would have been resolved a year ago, or it wouldn't have never happened in 2016 or 17 or 18. So apparently it needed to get said, because if it doesn't get said now, it never will be, because nobody else is going to come out like this. They're just not. And thanks to people like you who want to spread the message, I'm not interested in MSNBC or CNN. You know, they'll put this out one time and go on to the next story. I'm interested in people on the ground, voters on the ground, to know not just about Bernie Sanders, but what Black operatives struggle with, why you don't see certain things happen in politics, why there's so much behind the veil that you're unfamiliar with. I've been working on this for a year. I could have talked about it a long time ago. I could have talked about it on the Breakfast Club, where I had millions of thousands of people watching. I didn't. I waited and tried to give an opportunity, every opportunity, to correct the situation. So here we are.
For Black voters, what are some things that you urge Black voters to do in these upcoming elections? And not only just presidential, but even local. What are some things that we need to be savvier about?
Yeah, first of all, politics is always local. You know, we hear that a lot, but I don't think people really embrace that. I'm a big proponent in the executive branch level. I believe in city council, county commissioners. You know, there you're not trying to persuade 200 or 300 people in your state house of representatives. So a lot of work can be done on the city or county level. Don't believe what they say. Oh, you know, I can't do it because of this or because of that. You usually have 5, 6 people on council. Some larger cities like Houston, you know, you may have more, but I think people don't pay enough attention to that. They don't hold enough of their local officials accountable. Also, when you talk about the state level as well, you'll hear Democrat leaders say, oh, you know, for example, in Florida, oh, well, you know, we can't do it because the Republicans are in control. You know, push some of that back. If you can't do it, and why are you in office? Start going to look at the stuff that they're earmarking. Look at the money that they're sending themselves. Look at the money that they're sending their friends, their nonprofits, and so forth. I've always talked about this for years, way before Bernie Sanders. I'm always going through the financial disclosures. Look and see who's paid what. Look and see if that Black candidate that's out talking about black in the hood. Look and see who their consultants are. Look and see who's getting paid $5,000, $10,000 a month. I guarantee you it's not nobody local Black. It's usually somebody white. Nothing wrong with that, but hold these politicians accountable to what they preach in our streets, what they preach in our hoods, and what they preach in our church. I've always said that for years. The federal level is what it is. Get behind your favorite candidate. I think having 20 plus candidates is great. It's going to force everybody to be vetted. It's going to force everybody to step up their game. I've always believed in flooding the ballot, even at the local level. I like seeing 8, 9 people run for one seat, you know, to see who really has the gumption to stick to it. So I think paying attention to the federal level is really important. seeing how that trickles down back to your local office. I'm not telling people don't vote. I'm not saying go vote for Trump. I'm not saying don't vote for Bernie Sanders. Whatever policy aligns, with your beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is have eyes wide open. Don't be afraid to critique anybody, including your favorite candidate. The less of two evils, as far as Black people are concerned, has not benefited us overall globally. We've made some changes, no question. We've made some strides. We've made some progress. But at some point in time, we really need to be putting some people in place that's going to fight for us. Where's our Alexandria Cortez? Why are they not lifting up, freshman Black women, in that way? This people of color umbrella, we're all the same. That's just not the reality. Where are our leaders? Who are we pushing? Who are we supporting? And who are you going to be vocal with? When it comes down to really standing in the gap. You doing this interview alone is still, whether you agree or disagree, you're still allowing me an opportunity to share my story. And that's hard for people to do. So we have to support people like you. We got to support Black media, independent media. I encourage people to share, donate whatever they can for Black media. It has become non-existent. That's the reason why CNN told the NABJ go to hell. I tell people that all the time. Fox and MSNBC met with NABJ. CNN is refusing to meet with NABJ because they don't like Roland Martin. Just for the simple fact that we got over 10,000 plus members, they shouldn't turn down that organization. They wouldn't turn down an editorial meeting with Politico, but you turn down an entire Black media. What does that say about what they say, what the power that they feel that we have or don't have? We're in serious trouble. Our newspapers are dying off. Many have died off. Our Black radio is owned and co-opted and taken over. New digital media is the place. But I know the reason why I don't have my show anymore weekly, because I know the time that goes into this, the scheduling, the time, the getting the interviews, the not having the staff, trying to be the production, trying to be this, trying to be that. So I would just hope that people support people like yourself. During 2020, if you really want to get support something, support independent Black media, because that's the only voice. You and I, our face and our name is attached to our words. We're not hiding under no fake Twitter name. So you have a lot to lose as well with your jobs and your prospects. So support the warriors that's out here doing the work. Anybody can talk on Facebook and Twitter, but half of these people that's talking won't go to their cubicle the next day and tell their boss what time it is. They quiet as a church mouse. So if people want to support 2020, start with supporting Black media. That's my main message to anybody, because if it's not for you and me and other people that are bringing out the truth, then we'll never know who to vote for in the first place. Or if we do lesser of two evils, we won't know to keep our eye out. The crime bill is important. In my last comments, focus on somebody fixing the results of mass incarceration. Biden wrote it. Bernie Sanders signed it. Again, nobody's saying that Joe Biden is not better than Trump. What I'm trying to say is if we are not loud, if we are not screaming, hey, we see you, we see what you're doing, then it just becomes a policy, words on a website. We have to be vocal. When they made promises about DACA, once Congress got in, people started screaming, what about DACA? What about DACA? What about DACA? That's why they made the change. We have to be screaming, what about mass incarceration? What about crack cocaine disparity? What about non-violent offenders? We have to scream it loud. It's not about Joe Biden. He's just one person. It's about the people in the hood, the people that's still locked up right now. I'm talking about specifically non-violent offenders. If we don't scream it and make it an issue, damn what they say about, oh, you're going to help Trump. No, we got to scream this so that when they get in office, they will know that we're watching. Politicians only respond by fear. Fear of losing their power and fear of losing their seat. They don't know nothing else, period. There you have it. Use it, lose it, can't make you choose it.
Tezlyn, I wish you the best on your lawsuit, but I want to thank you so much for stopping by and talking to Arc Republic and pointing out a number of things I could say. So I can't even talk. When I hear you, I always stop because you have a lot of great, insightful, in-depth, textured, layered ideas that need to continue to spread. And this is why I wanted you on, as well as a lot of us do the work, but when it comes for people to do the work for us, we often turn our heads. So I hope that this is helping do the work for you. So
absolutely.
I'm pushing the line for you as well.
I appreciate it. And I want to say this to people that think I'm a fool about, oh, well, you shouldn't be talking about it because your attorney shouldn't be talking about it. Let me tell you something about the truth. The truth is the same when you arrest me. If people watch First 48, it's gonna be the same when you arrest me. It's gonna be the same when I get on that stand. It's gonna be the same when I walk away. See, I don't have to. People that got to come up with all kind of reasons why I don't get into certain details, because some of that everybody don't need to know every card you have. Best believe I got plenty of them. But as far as the thing that I brought to people's public to attention are documented articles, documented receipts, documented information. I just took the time to thread it along. But there's no fear in trying to isolate. See, that's an isolation tactic. Oh, you don't need to be talking about it. Don't talk about it, because they want it to die down. They don't want to buy it. No, I'm going to talk about it. And then after we move on to the next phase of this, I'm still going to be talking about accountability for Black folks across the board, not just for Bernie Sanders. That doesn't stop. Either you with it or you not. You know, many of my pieces, I say I organize block to block. You either with us or you not. So I'm not worried about interviewing with you or Fox or whoever. Like you said before we started, well, I know Tezlyn, a lot of people may not never know who they're interviewing with. See, that don't bother me, because the truth is the truth. I'm going to say it before in the book of the Lamb. When I stand before King Jesus, this is going to be the same answer that it was here on earth. And people that got different answers for different audiences, they have different motivations. Mm-hmm. I stand for Black folks in front of the alt-right Fox. I stand for Black folks in front of the alt-right Bernie Sanders. I stand for Black folks with Benjamin Crump, who they say is a Black nationalist. I stand for Black folks with you, regardless. It don't matter. On the streets to the corporate seats, it's the same. And when people switch their message up, that's when you know who's lying. So folks, pay attention to that. See how their message change. And you're going to see a lot of shapeshifters. Like on True Blood, you're going to see a lot of shapeshifters between now and 2020. So keep the pressure on. Keep asking for reparation. Keep asking for the pie in the sky. I don't give a damn if you think it's going to happen or not. Just put it on them so we can see if they're going to make a stand, or if they're going to keep shape-shifting and say, what do you mean? I don't know who they at. Let's see if they go. Let's see if they answer that question before 220. And these pundits too. A lot of these pundits that's playing these games, put them on out there. It ain't making sense, Simone. 1 minute you was with Sanders, now you with Biden. Which one? Well, her answer is he's better than Trump. Okay, well, that may work for her. But there's some people out there that say, see, just because you on TV and snapping and rolling your neck, and I'm not talking about her, I'm just talking about in general. Ooh. That don't mean you down for the cause. Mm-hmm. See, everybody can do all of that. But when it come down to if you're going to take a stand, a lot of folks, pundits included, operatives included, they're going to take that check. So don't fight for these people who ain't even willing to fight for you. Pay attention. It's going to be a hell of a ride in 220. I look forward to it. Hopefully you'll have me back once we get through this mess. We can start talking about these candidates.
I definitely would love you back. I'm definitely going to tap into you and say, sis, what it do, what it look like. Give me the specs. Give me the specs. Yes. Tezlyn Figaro is not a talking point. She is not to be bought or sold. Thank you.
Thank you so much.